Is here. I'm on live. Yeah, okay, great. All right, the pizza's here, and so we are going to have prayer and ask the Lord to bless the food we're about to eat. And I'd also like to introduce you. He's already been introduced, I know, to our speaker, Joshua Lindsey, who is here. He's a YouTuber with a channel Ready to Harvest, correct? And so he's going to be sharing about his work, maybe a little bit what got him into that. And I know there might be some interest with some of you in content creation, so he might have some pointers for you, as well as just in his work with understanding, working at understanding from a neutral point of view, the ways that different people view God. All right, let's pray. Dear God, we're thankful for your goodness to us. We're thankful that you've brought Joshua here to share with us. We ask that you would bless the food we're about to eat, give us strength from it to do your will. Be with this lunch and learn. Open our hearts to hear what you'd have for us. Let the words of our mouth, the meditations of our heart be acceptable in your sight, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Well, I do want to say thank you. I know they're not all here right now, but well, first, thank you to Austin. He's the one who told President Johnson about my YouTube channel, and apparently they thought it was good enough to let me come and speak to you folks. And also, of course, thanks to President Johnson for inviting me here. Thank you to Dr. Curvilla. He took me out to dinner last night, and that was great. And I read his book, by the way, before I came up here, too. My whole thing is researching. I'm the guy who's supposed to know about different Christian denominations and things like that. So when you let me know that you exist, then you've told me to go and dig in. So I already have. But it's great to be here. It's a great campus. This is really neat. I've never been to Boston before. Really enjoy being up here where I can look out. I've spent a lot of time standing in front of windows already this morning, and that's been a lot of fun. I was asked to give a title for what this was so it could be put up on Facebook or YouTube or whatever. And so I actually sent 3 titles because I was given a list of ideas by President Johnson about things that I could talk about. And so the title that we landed on was Surviving YouTube as a Christian. Christian content creation can be a good thing. And really what this is going to be a mix of things that are my journey and things that are kind of particular to my channel, how I got where I am now. And additionally, things that maybe you would like to know if you decide to start a Christian YouTube channel, or a lot of the principles could, I'm sure, stretch to other channels as well. Although I don't know about TikTok. I'm not sure if it can be redeemed or not, but we're still finding out about that one. So I won't assume, though, that all of you know about my YouTube channel or have watched it or watched it very much. And maybe some of you hearing that I was going to be here have watched a video or two. But my name is Joshua, and my channel is Ready to Harvest. That channel, the first denomination videos that I made on the channel were in late 2018. And so that's already been a little while now, 5-6 years since I started it. And I've had a lot of fun, but also had a lot of interesting opportunities to learn myself, and I hope to share some of those things with you. Really, though, the 2 things that I know that I'm going to talk about are denominations and YouTube. Both of those things are things that I think a lot of people, especially people at a Christian college, would be interested in. Nowadays, people on a college campus, most college campuses are very interested in technology, and for Christians, a lot of times people want to know, what are the people across the street? What about that church that's right there? What do people actually believe there? And so I, of course, have interest in both of those things, and it's led to me to create a YouTube channel, and ultimately it's grown to the place that it is now. I never expected originally when I was starting, I was like, well, it'd be really neat if it grew to have 10,000 followers or something like that. And right now it's 160-some thousand subscribers to the YouTube channel, and there's a definite core community who watch all of the videos that I make. But that's the idea. If you go to my channel, normally what you'll find, I have a weekly video, and one week there'll be a video on a particular denomination. And I've made them on the large ones, but also on the small ones. So when I was with Dr. Curvilla last night at dinner, they were talking about, And I had asked Austin, what denominational background he came from, and he mentioned the Biblical Mennonite Alliance, and I said, well, I made a video on the Biblical Mennonite Alliance. And so even small groups, and that's kind of the idea. If you go and you look on YouTube for a video on the Biblical Mennonite Alliance, you're probably going to find mine. There's just not a lot of them out there. And same way across every different denominational tradition. So I have videos on Anabaptists and on Lutherans and Baptists and Anglicans, and even the groups that are considered to be less orthodox. So I have videos on Unitarians, and I have some videos on Latter-day Saints and things like that. I'll just talk about everybody because my goal is let's find out what they believe. And sometimes, there's a value. People like going to a video, okay, here is what's wrong with this group. Here's what I need to try to change if I try to encounter a person that believes like this. There's a great value in that, but sometimes you get a little suspicious. It's like, but is the person telling me that accurately representing the person? So my channel is not saying that there's anything wrong with the apologetics or the polemics or going and trying to understand these groups and even push back against people who believe wrongly. But it's saying let's all start by at least understanding what the other side believes so we can make an honest evaluation of what actually is the problem. I think you should be able to, if you want to make a solid reasoned argument against the beliefs of anybody else, you should be able to start the conversation by saying, all right, you believe this. Is this correct? And they'll say, yes, I believe that. And you're like, all right, and I believe this. So now that we've established what the difference is, let's challenge that. Because a lot of times what instead happens is you say, you believe this, and they say, no, I don't believe that, and then you spend a lot of time saying, no, you really do believe that, and you never get anywhere with that argument, trying to convince somebody that they believe something that they don't believe, right? And so my channel is to some extent a channel about an encyclopedia about denominations where you can go and get that neutral information. Now, how did I get the name Ready to Harvest is one thing that people often ask. And of course, you can tell the biblical reference from John 4:35, say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white, all ready to harvest. So ultimately, it is a biblical reference. But for me, I've always been interested in technology and computers and the internet. And one of the things I do if I ever want to start anything and call it anything, which I've done multiple times, is the first place I go is to a website that you can look up the web domain name and see if it's available. So I was online and saying, I want to make a YouTube channel, and I didn't know what the purpose would be eventually, but I said, I need to make a name for it. So I started thinking of biblical references and typing in to see if the .com was available, and readytoharvest.com was available. So ta-da, we have Ready to Harvest. And later on, I started making videos about denominations, but that wasn't the original thing that I was doing. It was just kind of a personal YouTube channel. I've since deleted some of my early videos that really aren't relevant to the channel today. But I committed in October 2020, I committed to making weekly videos. Now, before that, I had made some videos on denominations. I was actually asked to teach a class, a week-long class on Christian denominations, and so I thought, well, I should make some videos to make the class interesting. And I'd taught classes before, and I find that if there's some videos every once in a while, it kind of breaks things up and makes things interesting. So I made a series of about, I think, 12 videos on different denominations. And while I was preparing, I was like, if I'm going to spend the time making these videos and researching them, everything, I should put some graphics on the screen, and I should make them nice enough that I can put them on the internet and see if anybody else would happen to like them too. And people did, and they commented, and they said, well, can you do one on this denomination and that denomination? I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. And so I actually started doing a bit more of that. And I said, well, I'll make a few more, and then maybe if I teach a class on denominations again, I'll have even more videos. So that's how things got started. And eventually I kind of got to a point where I was like, is this going to become anything else? Should I stop? I was thinking, maybe I'll just cut back and stop regularly trying to make videos on this topic. And I actually was going on a walk. I had my daughter in the stroller at the time, and this was 2020. And I was just going on a walk, and I was thinking about, should I continue making denomination videos or not? And I thought, what would be kind of neat is if I make a video just on one particular precise denomination. Instead of Presbyterian, how about the Presbyterian Church in America? And we'll make one on not just Lutheranism, but I'll make one on the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, which is the largest conservative Lutheran denomination in the U.S. And I'll make another one on the Anglican Church in North America, which is the more conservative of the two major Anglican denominations in the U.S. And then I'll make a third video that compares all three of them, and that one will be easy to make because I already studied all three, so it's like I get a third video for free after doing the research for the other three, and so I did that, and that made 4 videos, and at the same time I ended up making another video that did quite well, and after that point I really never had a question again. I thought I should keep doing this. So at that point I had 3,000 subscribers in October 2020. In March 2021, I had 5,000. June of 2022, I had 50,000, and then April of 2023, it went up to 100,000. So that was really amazing. I was, again, like I said, I wasn't expecting that, at least not originally. Once I got to 10,000, I started to see the trend, and I was like, all right, I will hit 100,000 eventually. So I do have that little silver play button that YouTube sends you because of the 100,000. But there can, of course, be, and I will talk about this a little bit, there can be some dangers, and one of the dangers with social media is that a person can kind of get obsessed with numbers and just always pushing for the higher thing and never content, because really, when do you ever reach the goal? For some people, it's like, well, if I get to 100,000, I'll be happy, but if you know about anything that you do really in life that has an increasing number, you know, you can say that, but once you get to that point, you'll say, what's next? And I know that Tom Brady, for example, when he had got, I think it was like his 5th Super Bowl ring or something like that, 5th or 4th, and everybody's like, boy, you're on top of the world, and he said, you know, there's got to be something more to life than this, right? No matter what the pinnacle of achievement that people think that a person might have, there's always something more if you're just, if achievement is all that you're aiming for. And so we do have to watch out for things like that. Now, my channel, the philosophy that I have at Ready to Harvest is to treat everybody fairly. So, and that includes people that, you know, people don't necessarily always feel like they want to treat fairly. I mean, it's like, it's one thing to treat, you know, another Anabaptist fairly or a Baptist fairly. It's one thing to treat the Lutheran fairly, but what about the Mormon? You can treat the Mormon fairly, you're going to treat the Unitarian fairly, and yes, the answer is yes, across the board. I'll treat them all fairly. And everybody, I hope, my goal is that if I make a video on a denomination, that anybody can watch that video and say, wow, this is a great video on my world or on what I believe. And if you look on my channel, you'll find often one of the top few comments is somebody saying, you know, like, I'm a pastor in this denomination, or my parents attended this denomination, and I really think you did a good job on that. So that helps me out. And of course, if somebody says it didn't represent them fairly, that helps me too, because then I can correct things and make things better. And I do think there's some huge downsides to misrepresenting people. And this would certainly play across the board if any of you ever start to do online content creation, regardless of exactly how you're doing it or what the purpose is. If you ever start talking about other people, you might be tempted to paint them just in a bad light, but one that's not warranted, or at least what misrepresents a person. The downside of misrepresenting somebody is that, let's say, for example, an example I've used on my channel before is that a person misrepresents a Calvinist, all right? You're not a Calvinist, you misrepresent a Calvinist, and you say, well, a Calvinist believes like this. And then later on, somebody who is listening to you heard what you misrepresented, they run into a Calvinist, and the Calvinist says, I don't believe that at all. Like, that's a misrepresentation. Here's what I believe. Now, what have you done? In the process of trying to make people beware of Calvinism, in this case, you've now set them up to, when they run into a Calvinist, they're actually more likely to listen to and believe the Calvinist because they discover that what you did misrepresented the person. Whereas if you had given the full picture and said, here's what Calvinists really believe, here's their best arguments, and here's why I believe they're wrong, then you've set them up properly to be able to deal with the challenge from somebody who is a Calvinist. Now, you can take that on any different theological position or any denomination. The Calvinist is just the example there. It's an example that I used in one of my videos called 4 Groups You Might Be Misrepresenting. But I think that the picture is clear. And also you will damage your reputation, because if you make it online and a Calvinist watches your video and then they say, well, this guy, he doesn't know anything about what I actually believe, I can't trust him, they won't trust anything else that you've made. And on the contrast, for my channel, what I found has been helpful is somebody says, you know, I watched you made 2 or 3 videos on me or on my world, and they're all accurate. So now, although I don't know firsthand about these other groups, I feel like I can trust what you have to say on them. So that's been really neat to be able to see that. Now, my channel is neutral, but I cannot be, and that's one of the things I like to tell people. There's a place for neutrality. There's a valuable place to be able to just represent people like an encyclopedia. And also, I don't feel like that's something that everybody is called to or necessarily needs to do. I don't think most online social media that a person would make on the religious world should be neutral. I believe that there's a great place for, preaching isn't neutral, right? You're just calling people to the truth, and you're going to step on some toes in that way. But me just making neutral content, so in other words, I'll talk about Lutherans, but I won't say, now here's why you should not be a Lutheran, or here's why you should be a Lutheran, or here's where Lutherans are wrong, or here's where Lutherans disagree with the Bible, or, et cetera, et cetera. I won't do those kind of things. I'll just explain what they are. I don't think that everybody's called to that, but my channel is neutral. I believe there's a place for it. But as a person, nobody should try to be neutral. You can't be neutral. I can't be neutral. I must have beliefs, and I think that's important. It's something I always like to point out about my channel when anybody brings it up. Is like, I'm not just going to try to be the most like wishy-washy, no convictions person just because my channel is neutral. But there's a place for one and a place for the other, kind of a Ecclesiastes kind of thing going on there. I've actually, another thing that's kind of unusual about my channel compared to most YouTube channels is, and by the way, this is a principle everybody will always say when they tell about you want to start a YouTube channel, you want to make a community, you want to get to know people, you want people to think that they know you really well. I don't do it that way. I've only mentioned my name, Joshua, on 2 or maybe 3 of all the videos I've ever made. Now people kind of find it out because other people will call me Joshua in the comments. And those 2 videos that I mentioned my name, at least one of them, actually both of them have like over 100,000 views at this point. So it did get out. But my focus is not on me on my channel. It's just on the information. I like people say, like, I have no idea what you believe. And actually I've had comments on my videos from people who think like they might know what I believe that are like completely opposite, have somebody like, man, this guy's an undercover Catholic, and the one like, this guy is, he believes this on that. And it's pretty funny to see what it is. But the fact is that nobody can come to a solid conclusion when they don't actually find the videos where I say what I believe. Indicates that I must be doing somewhat of a good job in that. Now, I've got to, time just travels so fast, so I've got to be careful there. And I do want to leave a little bit of time maybe for some Q&A. So if you are thinking about any questions you might ask, you've got a little bit of time to think of those. But I do want to give some thoughts that I think won't just be about me and my channel, but things that are applicable in case you decide that you think that content creation on an online platform is something that you would like to do. Until the advent of social media, we mostly interacted, and I say mostly, not entirely, but mostly people interacted with people within their own cliques, within their own little social groups. A lot of times that might be a church. So, a person who grew up Lutheran in many cases would primarily interact with a lot of other Lutherans. I mean, even when you look in the United States, there are geographical areas that are predominantly one particular group. When I think of Anabaptists, I think about the fact that where I am around Fargo, North Dakota, there's not very many of them. Like the Hutterites are about all that we have over there and not much else. But there's a lot of Lutherans. Lutherans is the big thing there, and a lot of Catholics. It's almost basically half and half Lutheran and Catholic, and then everybody else gets the little remainder. But a lot of people have interacted primarily with their own group. Online, things are so different. If you make online content, and it doesn't matter, like you want to make a video and you're saying, I'm presenting, the Manite perspective or the Anabaptist perspective or whatever you'd like to make it on, other people will watch. Like you'll get Catholics watching. There's a lot of Catholics in the world, if you didn't realize. If you take all of everything that calls itself Christianity, the majority, not the plurality, the majority of that is Catholic. Catholics have over 50% of claimed Christianity in the world today. So there's a lot of Catholics online. They'll find it. Orthodox will find it. Baptists will find it. Methodists will find it. And so you'll either have to like start making enemies with your commenters, or you'll find yourself being pulled to being a little bit more ecumenical, or you just have to find a way to deal with it. So that's something to think about. If oh man, I gave this lesson, it was so good, I want to put it on the internet now. Yeah, it was really interesting under the particular context you presented it, but you're going to have a whole new audience, all right? And that will make things even more interesting. And often it'll open your eyes a bit. And that's one thing that certainly happens. And you'll run into people who have all different beliefs, and you'll run into people who don't believe like anybody else. You know, like I've seen some pretty interesting theology. There's no church that teaches this, but this guy, like he's figured it out, and he wants to comment on every video, telling us what he believes. That some of that stuff can be pretty interesting. But social media, it's a medium of influence, and the question ultimately is who is influencing whom. You might think as the content creator that you're going to have a lot of opportunity for influence, and you do, but you can be influenced as well at the same time, because with YouTube or anything else, you're not making all the content and then putting it up and then leaving forever and watching people watch. It tends to be like you make something, you see how people respond or react in the comments, and that might influence you to, oh, well, I don't want people to say that, so next time I'm going to do this in my video. And so it is a two-way street, and you do have to be careful who is influencing whom. It's also a location to some extent. Social media, different platforms are you know, they're known for different things, and there are locations where, you know, there are physical locations. I'm sure there's some here in Boston where you would not frequent, you would not go. There are also online locations that probably aren't the best place for a Christian to be. So you have to decide with even things like which social media platforms are good. Are you going to enable comments or disable comments? Are you going to moderate the comments? Are you going to set up automatic filters to get rid of certain comments and things like that? Those are all important things. And there's a lot of pitfalls. There can be pride. There can be obsession. Social media, obviously on the viewing side, can be a huge time sink. A lot of people spend way too much time watching social media, but it can be a time sink on the creation side too. Now, here's some of the ways that I've made it work, and I think that you ought to think about if you're going to do anything on social media. First, you don't promise more than you can do. Sometimes people jump in and like, man, I'm going to make daily videos or something like that. It's like a terrible idea, because that's your whole life is now, especially if you're a small channel where you can't really afford your whole life being wrapped up in it. You know, you just never get any time off to think about anything else. I make weekly videos, and I think some people could do videos more often than I do and still be able to manage life, because my videos take a whole lot of research and time to do. So there's way more time in the background than just the video that goes out. But you definitely have to evaluate and say, how much time do I really want to spend on this? And is it worth it? What are the things that I'm putting off in order to do this? Another thing I've done to make it work is work ahead so that you can take time off from things. If you make social media content and you make let's say you decide someday you want to make a weekly video. If you're always working, say you want to release on Saturday night, and you're always working like Thursday night, it's like, oh, I haven't got it done. Like, I'm going to have to spend all Friday to make this video. If you're just always pushing for the next video, and then when you've released that video, it's like, it's straight into it again. Oh man, I've got to start working on the next video because that's just a week away. That kind of stuff will really drain you fast. It'll burn you out. I see so many YouTube creators who are burnt out from things like that. I work ahead. You know, working ahead doesn't actually take any more time. It just takes a little bit more lead time. So if you, before you release any videos, if you make 5 videos, and then you start your weekly video release schedule and start making one each week, you'll be 5 videos ahead. And so if you have to take a week off, you're still 4 videos ahead, right? And that's the way I work. I have a couple months of videos that are already made, and they're going to go out regardless of whether I do anything or not. If somebody invites me to come and speak at Sattler College, I can do that. I don't have to stress out about, oh, what's going to be released, because I've worked ahead. And I think that's a good idea for social media. And if you feel like you don't have enough time to work ahead, then you probably are going to have to do some kind of a slower schedule for things. A huge one, though, is I don't chase the clicks. Now, there's some videos that I make that I know will be more popular, but a lot of my videos will not. You know, when I made my video on what is the Biblical Mennonite Alliance, I did not expect, like, man, this is going to be the next viral hit. Like, some topics can't be a viral hit. You know, people are like, oh, if you learn how to make videos viral, you go viral every time. Yeah, as long as you stick to topics that can be viral. But some topics just can't be. They're more specific. They're more about a smaller area that most people won't be interested in. And that's fine. For what I've done, I've decided what I want to do is I want to become an expert as much as I can in Christian denominations. So I will make videos on these very precise, smaller denominations. I'll learn about them. And then I'll be able to make more general videos about Mennonites as a whole, say, or Baptists as a whole, or Lutheran denominations. And because I've learned the very specifics, I'll have the expertise to be able to make those more general videos that will be more interesting to more people. And also, there's people who will go and they'll, hey, I'm in a denomination with 100 churches, and I wonder if anybody's ever made a video, or what happens if I type my denomination into YouTube, and they'll find me because nobody else has done it. And so that's something that I have found to be neat, to see the people who have run into me because of these videos on small denominations. But I'm not trying to chase the clicks, because if you do that, again, you really haven't decided what you're making. You've let the viewers decide what you're making. If you're chasing the clicks, you have to change your topic to match what people will click on, and you'll be thinking, is this going to be clickable or not? And so now I think there's some things that you can do. You can try to make your thumbnails interesting, your titles interesting, and if you're literally making stuff that nobody's interested in and that's pointless, that's not a good thing either, right? But boy, I tell you what, when I go and see YouTube, like a regular old home screen, and like every thumbnail is like circles around random things and arrows pointing at stuff and screaming faces and things, it's like, I really don't want to be that person. Like, I don't care if it gets more clicks. And honestly, I've seen a lot of Christian content creators who do that, and I kind of lose respect for it. I see that and it's like, oh, really? They went that low? Like they're going to make these really clickbaity stuff, and they're always making stuff on what is controversial, or always talking bad about, like every video is trying to be drama. That can be a bad testimony to do that kind of stuff all of the time. All right, a few things that I've learned. One of the things for me particularly on denominations, boy, I've learned the basics on every denominational family, and that's been really, really neat. It's really valuable information for me to have. And one of the things that I think all of us ought to do is try to remember what it's like when you didn't know. Whatever you're going to make videos on, if you think that you want to do something like that, try to remember what it was like when you didn't know. And then say, when I didn't know, what was the things that really would have helped me, or that I really wanted to know but I didn't know how to find out, and then make videos to tell people how to do that. Because I find it's easy to forget. I remember a time where I did not know whether Presbyterians or Methodists were Calvinist or Arminian. I remembered Presbyterians and Methodists, this was like before I went to Bible college, one of them is like really Calvinist and one of them is really Arminian, but I forget which one is which, right? And to me that sounds like, with what I know today, that sounds like, boy, how naive. But I remember what it was like not to know it, and so because of that, I think there's probably other people like that, right? And they would love to know what's the difference between a Calvinist and Arminian, or a Presbyterian and a Methodist for that matter, or what Presbyterians believe. And so if you remember what it's like not to know, then you will be part of the way to be able to make things that will help people who also don't know. Also, online, people will argue about everything, all right? Now, my channel has got to be, as far as Christian content creation online, it's got to be one of the least controversial, ultimately. I mean, it's pretty neutral. I have a vast majority of positive comments from all different sides of the Christian world. But there's still people who argue. They mostly don't argue with me. They argue with each other in the comment section. But they do sometimes argue with me too. And I tell you what, for most of you, if you decide to make a Christian YouTube channel, you're probably not going to be a neutral point of view channel. You're going to have people. I tell you what, it still hurts, like online, when people attack you, or they say things. It can be too much. Like it can easily be too much if you're not willing, if you're not ready to just, if you haven't had people stand up and kind of yell in your face. That's what you're going to be dealing with. And a lot of people, you may see, if you've watched anything on YouTube, you may see every once in a while somebody will make a video about like, man, I'm burned out, or like this, and you think, well, man, you're a big channel, you have all these subscribers. Some random person who has no subscribers will leave a comment, and the big channel, they'll still read that comment, and it'll still hurt somewhat. So that can definitely be a negative that you'll have to work past. And one of the big things is just learning to ignore. You don't need to respond to everything, but just let some things stand. Another thing I've learned is that everybody thinks that they're right. People like to point that out too, but that's not necessarily a surprising thing. Somebody's like, well, every Christian denomination, they all think that they're the right one, right? How weird is that? It's like, well, okay, and do you think you're the right person, or do you think that you're wrong? Well, everybody thinks they're right. Of course, if we thought differently, then we'd change our mind, and then we'd be right? So that's how it works. But the biggest question, a bigger question, I think, than the fact that all these groups think they're right, is sometimes you think you're the only true form of Christianity. I think that's a stronger claim, and when people say that they're the only true form of Christianity, they certainly are inviting themselves to a lot more examination. And there's a lot of groups that say that, but not everybody does say that. Another thing that I've learned is there's a lot of talk about conversion on my channel, because when you talk about different denominations, people talk about how they were one and they converted to another group. People convert for certain reasons. It's been interesting to see this on my channel. I've had people who are like pretty strongly like, man, Catholic Church is the only true, and then later on I see the same channel like, man, the Orthodox Church is the only true. Like, you can tell they converted and now they're just as adamant for their new group as their old one. But people convert sometimes because they don't know what their denomination believes. I find that to be interesting. They'll convert to some other group based on, they started, oh, well, I really feel like I ought to be Lutheran. I really feel like I ought to be Methodist. And they'll go and they'll watch the apologetic material from the other side and get convinced on it when they didn't even really know what their own group believed, right? They were kind of raised in it, but not very well. People also convert from convenience. They convert because of emotion. I've seen that. And people do convert because of history, church history, right? There's a lot of church history claims of continuation of the original church or the true church. A lot of people will convert because of that. And theology, but not as often as you think. Just straight theology, like, man, I think what I believe, what this church teaches is wrong theologically. That's definitely not the top reason that people convert between different Christian denominations, and that's been interesting to see. Another reason people convert is strong voices. About every group that exists has been started by somebody with a strong voice. And there are strong voices that are starting things physically in the real world, but I'll tell you what, online is a huge influence, and a lot of people are converting because of strong voices online. There's some strong voices for Catholicism online. Like a strong voice is like the Catholic Answers ministry, like the apologetics ministry for Catholicism. People convert to Catholicism because of that YouTube channel. There's strong voices for Christian evangelicalism, like Mike Winger online, and people run into his material and convert to evangelicalism. And so strong voices is another reason that people convert a lot of times. As you see, I'm giving kind of a mashup of a lot of different things here, but some things to think about. We could talk for 5 hours. But I'm trying to pack as much as I can into the short amount of time here. Another thing I've learned by having a YouTube channel, and you'll have this too if you start anything, is you learn your own speaking habits, because everybody's watching you. And as soon as you mispronounce something, including like the city that somebody's from, boy, they're going to let you know about that. You learn about all the clicks that you have in your voice when it's time to edit the video and it's just, you're just cutting all this stuff out. You learn about all those things and all the mispronunciations. Everything comes out. Or if you like have a bad face for video, if you're frowning all the time, people, they'll comment, boy, you don't look like a very cheerful person or something like that. So you'll learn those things. I actually appreciate, there's a guy named Galen, who, I don't know Galen, but he comments on my videos. The main reason he comments on my videos is to tell me whenever I pronounce something wrong, and I appreciate it. I've got a great linguistic education from Galen. I don't pronounce it homogeneous anymore. It's homogeneous. I was surprised at that. So many people say homogeneous, and he was like homogeneous, and I looked it up. Oh, it is homogeneous. Okay, so I fixed that. I pronounced that word correctly now, and several others. So you'll learn some of those things. Another thing is there is the reality though of the ever learning idea. Ever learning, never coming to the knowledge of the truth kind of thing. I'll tell you what, in Christian denominations and basically every field in life, you can study forever. You can. And some people feel like you've got to exhaust the field before you can speak on it. You've got to study the whole thing. How could you possibly know like which Christian denomination is right if you haven't looked into all of them? Well, then nobody can know it's right, because I can tell you what, nobody's looked into all of them. The longer I've studied, every week I find that there's another denomination out there. There are a lot of them. And so we could speak on that more too. But there is just this reality of no end to deeper study. You can always go deeper. In fact, I found it easier to make what you might call traditionally good videos when I didn't know as much as I know now. Like once you get to a certain point when there's like, you start to understand more intricacies, it's you feel like you've got to put that in the video, and then the video just becomes bogged down and it's not interesting. So there's a point where that can be another trick. It's like, wow, like how can I make something that people will understand and not feel like I'm misrepresenting with all of this other background information coming in? So those are other challenges you'll run into. I've certainly learned some things about my own growth. Some of the older videos I've made, I was like, boy, once I make this video, like the whole world should see this. And now it's like, delete, like I want to get rid of that old video. That was no good. And people always will have a higher estimation of themselves, I think, than they ought to in things like social media. But I'm glad I didn't begin my channel until I was in my late 20s. And I do see a lot of people making content that comes from at least some place of immaturity that I feel like later on they'll regret making. And I'm not saying that I won't regret some of the things I'm making already. And, when I know that in 10 years I'll look back at myself today and say, man, that guy didn't know nothing, right? But there is a danger in just going out and speaking. The Bible says in James 3:1, my brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. Watch out that you're going out teaching people if you don't know for sure what you're saying, because that is something that you will be responsible for, and you can end up with a pretty big audience pretty fast and have a lot of influence, and that's dangerous, biblically speaking. Getting outside of echo chambers has two prongs. You get out where you can be convinced or be swung to new positions by other people online, but you can also get better at your own skills and apologetics by learning what people really believe and what people are like. So there's two prongs to it. Like, you got to watch out when you put yourself out there on social media. People are going to try to change you and challenge you and things like that. That's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you have some foundation of strength to start from. But I mean, there's Christian YouTubers, content creators who are themselves converting to different religions or different denominations out there. I've seen that happen from channels that have 100,000 subscribers plus. So watch out if you think like, well, I'm going to get on there just to tell everybody what I believe. Make sure you know what you believe, and make sure that what you're saying is something worth saying. Don't just go speaking on topics that you're not familiar with, because that can really come back to have a negative impact on your own life. Let me see what I'm doing for time. Say a few more things here. So let me just give a couple of generic ideas. From somebody who spent some time making a YouTube channel and had some level of success with it, I suggest starting with searchable YouTube videos. You're not going to become viral. You're not going to hit the algorithm probably with your first set of videos. So what you start doing is you say, what is something that somebody might look for online that isn't there? Where is there and be precise. Like, you're not trying to get a big audience. There's a small audience, maybe people who believe like you or something like that, and I'm going to make a video on a precise topic, and they'll search for it and they will find it. And once you've made several of those, people will find you. If they're good videos, they'll subscribe or they'll come back. They'll want to keep watching your videos. And let's say you get 20 people who find you by your searchable videos. Then when you make a video that is more generic or on a topic that people might not be searching for, those 20 people hopefully will click on that video because they say, well, I wasn't looking for this, but it showed up and recommended, and this is a person I trust, and that's an interesting topic. I want to see what they have to say. And that's where you start to see things turn. Eventually, if you've made things searchable long enough and people have found you that way, then you'll have enough of trust that those people will click on things when you make on other topics. So when I started, I wouldn't do very good at all if I were just to make a video that said, what is a Lutheran? There's too many other people making videos that would say, what is a Lutheran, especially Lutherans themselves, and nobody would ever find it. So you start far more specific, like Methodist versus Lutheran. There's a lot fewer videos on that one. But you could imagine Lutherans and Methodists being interested in watching it. So I started with specific, and then once my channel got big enough, now I can make a video. It doesn't matter if I put a video out with a blank title and a black thumbnail, people will click on it, right? It probably won't hit the algorithm very well, but people, what's going on here, So you have that opportunity eventually, but you have to realize where you start. Also get better with everything that you make. Never stop improving. You have to get used to the haters, and find ways to temper your own expectations and really realize, have a goal for what you think you ought to be doing with your channel, and be content with doing that, and don't always think like, boy, I want the whole world to see me, and if anything less, I'll not be content. Godliness with contentment is great gain. All right, I've said quite a bit. I do have some other things I can say if I need to, but I do want to give an opportunity for questions, and they can be YouTube questions. If you just have questions about a Christian denomination, something about that, I certainly have some knowledge on that area. I'd be happy to answer, or the combination of those, or anything else. So I will open it for questions. Yes, sir.
What is your experience and your reaction to
To what? To comments. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I do. Yeah. The way that I handle the comments, I mean, what I tend to do nowadays is my video is scheduled for release. I'll let it release, and I won't even look at the video for a while. Like, I'll just kind of let things go for a while. One of the things with the negative comments, if somebody leaves a negative comment, is, you know, somebody else is going to read that negative comment, and if there's people who like you, you know, they'll handle the negative comment, right? So if I don't look at it, if I look at the comments as soon as they come in, I feel like I need to respond. If I just step back for a few hours, somebody else comes in there and they take care of it, and then I don't have to bother with it at all, right? But, you know, occasionally, you know, the negative comment might have, well, first is like, just because it's negative doesn't mean it's wrong, right? You know, maybe there's some merit to it, or, you know, so if there's a constructive criticism, then I think people even appreciate and respect when they see you comment and say, "Oh, thanks for that input. That's you know, that's really valuable to understand that perspective," and things like that. Other than that, though, if the comment is, you know, just unnecessary, rude, or something like that, those things, if your whole channel isn't built around being a mean person, which sometimes, unfortunately, people do, people will, on the whole, they'll thumbs down those comments, and on YouTube, those will go to the bottom. And the more comments you get, the more obscured those comments will be, and they can just kind of be forgotten and ignored. And I think for most negative comments that are, you know, have no practical value, especially if your channel gets to any size, you just eventually have to ignore. There's really nothing more that's you know, that you can do than that. If you comment and respond to it, then it just invite more content. And often I have occasionally responded, and you see how unreasonable some people are, and it's like, you know, this is not a good idea to do that. Yeah. Yes.
So this is not like a question, that's just a comment. I don't know if you interacted with the content creator, maybe Zuma. He also creates some videos about denominational distinctives.
Yeah.
And he has a very noticeable blind spot when it comes to all Anabaptists. As far
Sure.
as he's concerned, the only people who practice Laban Baptist are Baptists.
Sure.
I like that we're actually recognized online.
Yeah, I did see his channel. You know, I was aware of his channel when it was much, much smaller than it is today. I think I first became aware of Redeemed Zoomer's channel when it was like 20,000 subscribers or something like that. Right before his really super viral video on every Christian denomination explained, which as you mentioned, didn't mention Anabaptists, so they're apparently not even a Christian denomination. But I don't think that was necessarily intentional. He actually contacted me a while back, because he wants me to make a video on his Reconquista, and I still do plan to do that eventually to see how that whole thing goes. It's hard. Like, I've thought, well, I mean, what a great YouTube video title to be viral, right? Every Christian denomination explained. I have a problem, like, okay, I feel like I could make a video like that, but I know it's not really going to be every. That's, again, with the problem with knowing too much. It's like you can't really make a video on every Christian denomination explained. There's just too many different groups. Yeah, I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to talk about Anabaptists, and I've been interested in Anabaptists for even before I went to Bible college. And one of the first, I was telling somebody on staff here that while I was in college, I wrote an essay on Felix Mons. And so anyhow, certainly, and growing up, I lived in Iowa for a while. We were very close to Mennonites and Amish. And so, yeah, I've definitely wouldn't want to leave them out. Yes. Yeah. Sure. You know, even today, but it's really been ever since YouTube came around, YouTube is kind of the video platform. Now there's the challenge of TikTok. TikTok is another video platform that exists. And, you know, Facebook there's videos on there too, though it's kind of a different feel altogether the way it works. It's not as much of a place where you go to search and find things as much as just stuff being fed to you. So I chose YouTube because really for what I was making, long form videos, YouTube is it's the town square of video content. I really just didn't even think about anything else. There's been some challenges that have come along since where, you know, there's been other groups like Rumble and such that are trying to be like more open or less censorship and things like that. But, you know, you can put them there and that's perfectly fine, but most people are still on YouTube. TikTok is different, you know, vertical video, still a shorter maximum length. There's a huge difference in place where people go and they search for a video or even are presented with videos and then they click on one to pick it and being fed the videos. If you're on a place like TikTok or on Instagram, Reels, or on YouTube Shorts, you aren't picking what you're watching. You're being presented with something and then you're deciding to click away. So on YouTube, you decide to click in. On these other platforms, you decide to click away. Really, for my content, I've mostly decided that YouTube's the place to be. Now, I have made some vertical videos that I've put on TikTok, and I've never really responded to comments there. I never really log in, but I just put them there, and some people may find me from that and come over to YouTube. And YouTube just announced that YouTube Shorts are going to be longer. They can only be a minute right now, but as of like a week or something, they're going to be able to be longer. So I'll be putting my 2-minute video series that I put on TikTok on YouTube in a vertical format. It's already on YouTube in a horizontal format. So we'll try that out too. But as far as video platforms, yeah, I think if there was actual one-to-one challenge to YouTube, I'll definitely look at it. Like, I don't want to get left behind. That's the thing. Like, somebody doing stuff on MySpace or something, a place can die. We haven't seen a lot of extremely dramatic examples like MySpace did, but social media platforms can go away. YouTube might eventually if the wrong decisions are made by Google. So, all right. Any other questions? Yes.
You were talking about before you go into the space, know what you believe.
Yeah.
So like it's almost like setting that proper foundation. So would you say that with what you're doing is almost similar like being a preacher or a pastor?
I've had people call me a pastor. Yeah. My channel is not that. I mean, though certainly people, like a lot of people can. And I think that most channels, if you make a channel on YouTube, you will probably be more likely to be actually teaching something in a more pastoral or preaching capacity than my channel is. Mine is more explanatory. I've said, I don't know that there's really a universal definition of a ministry, but I've said my channel is not a ministry. I've said that before. Now, you may disagree, and maybe I disagree. I don't know. But like, I didn't make it as a way to try to convert people. I made it as like, this is a service so that people can do ministry. Like, if they have my channel, now you can do ministry because you've learned about these. Now, using this, you can do ministry. All right. So the channel itself is just a resource. It's just an encyclopedia. Now, the fact that I'm doing this work and enabling ministry, maybe that makes it a ministry. But that is something that's just a little bit different about mine. And I certainly have a lot of respect. And maybe someday I will make a channel that more allows me to share particularly what I believe. But that's just not, that's not been my calling right now. So I would say ultimately my answer to your question is, for me, no. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious, how many hours a week do you spend in search and creation? And how do you do that working out long-term with a family?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Along with that, do you find the videos to be what's pushing you in your research?
Sure.
Is that giving you kind of like what college does?
Yeah.
It gives you the deadlines that you need to push yourself in the research that you want.
Yeah. Oh man, you certainly. Yeah, it's not like I'd just be doing the same work I'm doing for fun if I weren't making videos, right? Having a YouTube channel or social media thing like that is a great, like if you just find yourself unmotivated and trying to find things to fill time, it's like I don't have that. I don't try to find things to fill time. If I have any opening in my life, then I have to be studying denominations. How much time do I spend a week? The thing is, I never calculate that because I'm a little afraid to see what that number is. So yes, I do have a family. I do have 4 kids, and I try to spend time with my family. We like to, right now with the weather, it's been good to go on bike rides, long bike rides, and as long as I'm with my family, I just forget, my other obligations, and I'm just putting that aside. And then, when the kids are in bed, and when time opens, that's it. Like I'm getting my laptop out, bringing up my latest chart of the denomination I'm studying, pulling up some statements of faith, and filling things in and working on it, or editing the graphics. It's a huge time investment. So yeah, each day tends toward the evening. I'll spend a few hours in that. If there's other times that pop up, and then the weekends, I'll be spending a lot of time studying and researching. So not every YouTube channel would necessarily have the same requirements. My big thing with my channel, I've always said, is high information density. What I really dislike is, let's say I wanted to learn about entire sanctification, and I just typed entire sanctification into YouTube, and there's like this 3-hour podcast. I'm like, great, 3 hours on entire sanctification. Well, how does it begin? So how was your week going? Yeah, and we went and we did, and it's like, I just can't stand spending my time listening to those podcasts where it's like, and then finally, like 2.5 hours in, they finally spend 10 minutes reading the Wikipedia article on entire sanctification. It's like, it's terrible. So I don't do that. My goal is if I can pack it any more tight, I will. And I've had a lot of comments saying slow down, and I do work a little bit on not talking so fast. Now my videos that are intentionally time limited, like such and such in 2 minutes, it's like too bad. Like I've got to talk fast, but I do try otherwise not to talk too fast. But yeah, if it's a 40-minute video, it's not me taking 15 minutes and spreading it out. It's like there's a lot in that video. It took me forever to make that video if it's 40 minutes long. And because of that, because it's high information density, for me to make a video that's 15 or 20 minutes is going to take, 8, 12. Some of my videos are way more hours that I've spent on it than that. Just to edit the video, normally is going to, sometimes the video to edit is just an hour. There's some nice tools now that help me with my video editing. Making the graphics, though, takes like 4 hours, and then studying them. The quick, short, easy videos like a trivia video or something like that, I might be able to do that in a couple hours. But otherwise, normally a video, I've been working on it multiple weeks. I'll work on multiple videos at a time. I'll study multiple videos, and then I'll make the graphics. I'll kind of do it in assembly line format, and then I'll edit a bunch of videos, and then upload them and schedule them and things like that. Somehow, there's still only the same amount of hours in a day and a week, but it works out. I've been able to keep ahead of the 1 video a week curve with that by just not slowing down. I don't have any intentions to quit, but I mean, things can change a lot, if growing family and things like that. So who knows what might change things, but I am planning to just keep doing what I'm doing. It's not like there's some end goal in sight, unless like the end goal is like finally made a video on every denomination, but I will be in the grave before that happens. So yes, I am thinking about like what it would be like when I'm I'm going to still have to go down the stairs when I'm 85 making videos on denominations to get down to my studio and things like that. I guess we'll see. I know there were a lot of questions. I can't remember if I answered every aspect of what you said, but
The last part was like, do you find this as a primary motivation for you?
Sure.
To keep studying?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, to some extent, I made this channel on Christian denominations. I didn't know that was what I was going to do. It just kind of fell in my lap, and yeah, like I've kind of become the Christian denominations guy. Like that just kind of happened, and well, that's I've embraced it. Like I enjoy it. It does keep me continuing to study. I'm very interested in the topic. I haven't lost interest in that at all. So I feel like I could just study it forever. And there's a lot of value in it. I feel like I'm providing a service. I will write a book. Like the biggest problem for me doing that right now is the time thing. Like I just don't have time. I know that the information I have is a lot better than every other like handbook of Christian denominations book that exists out there today. And I would like to make a book that is much more colorful and interesting and things like that, because those can be kind of dry. But time is the thing that's stopping me right now from doing that. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
There's a request from the Zoom world that you repeat questions for the microphone before.
Okay, well, I don't know if there's very many left at this point with the time that we have, but I'll try to do that. Yes.
So you might have touched on this, but have your theological views changed since you started the channel?
Oh, good question to ask right when we're done. All right, we're out of time. So for the Zoom world, he asked, have my theological beliefs changed while I'm doing the channel? Now, this was a question I'm pretty sure I was asked at dinner last night, too. And part of it is it's kind of hard to divide a person's life into what exactly caused every influence in one's own life. So yes, there are areas in which my theological views have changed in the time frame in which I have had my YouTube channel, though it is a bit difficult for me internally to discover whether the work that I've done on the channel is something that's caused that change or not. I don't think that anything extremely, like you'd consider extremely substantial or life-changing, but I actually keep a list on my phone of like particular theological things that either I'm thinking about or that I've have a view that has altered over time. And so yeah, there are things that I'm thinking about, and I don't know that I'm going to share all of those or any of those with you right now, but yes, in that time frame, I really think it'd be very surprising to any of us if, as soon as you learn about Christian theology and then you live in that world, and in 20 years past, that you discover that everything you started out learning is where you've landed, and nothing has ever changed. I think that'd be very surprising. It'd be surprising to me to find out if that had happened to me. So yeah, the answer is that it has not, and yes, I have in fact changed. All right, well, it does look like we're out of time. So thank you again for those who invited me. Thank you for those of you who are here, and I had a great time. I've enjoyed being in Boston. I think I'll have a great flight home, and I hope I'll have some more interaction with you folks all as well in the future.